Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tea with Tara. Today, what I thought I'd like to do, I don't have anybody to interview today, so I thought today might be a good day to talk to you about some of my favorite books. If you are a bookworm like myself, then you have your own favorite books, and I thought I would share some of mine, give a little backstory about how I came to love the authors that I love, and maybe it'll give somebody some ideas, and you might want to go out and read the same books. And as always, please like my channel, subscribe to my channel, please like the video if you do in fact like the video. So I'm going to start with my favorite book of all time, which I think is a lot of people's favorite book, and that is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Now, I don't know anybody who has not read this, and if you haven't, please do yourself a favor and read it. But To Kill a Mockingbird happens to be one of the greatest novels ever written. And I did not read this in high school. I know we had required reading lists when I was growing up, but we did not read this in high school. I read this during my summer vacation in New York one time, and my godmother actually bought me a copy so that I could read it, and I just fell in love with the characters. I so identify with Scout Finch. I don't know anybody, any little girl who was a tomboy, and I was a tomboy growing up, who didn't love Scout Finch. She's just so audacious and outspoken, and I just love everything about her. So, Scout Finch and Jo March from Little Women are two of the literary characters that I most identify with. Now, that's my favorite book of all time. And here comes one of my favorite authors of all time, Willa Cather. I don't know if you can see that, but this book is called My Antonia. And I know what people are thinking. If you're not really into prairie life, you might not find this book interesting, but I promise you, if you read it, you will be enthralled by the story. Willa Cather has an exceptional gift to make landscape come alive. And it's actually one of the characters in the book. She can make the prairie one of the characters. She's one of the few people who can write about prairie life and make it come alive and make it interesting and fun. And here's a fun fact. She grew up, she was born in Virginia, and then she moved to Nebraska when she was 8 or 9 years old. She did not like prairie life. She wanted to get out, she wanted to see the world, be a writer, and as through her own admission, she did not want to end up dying in a cornfield somewhere. But she used prairie life, her life in Nebraska, to write about My Antonia and another great book called Oh Pioneers. And it's definitely worth a read. So if you haven't read this, you might want to do yourself a favor. Willa Cather is by far one of my favorite writers. And now I don't just look up to writers because of the books that they write. I also enjoy learning about them as human beings and people. I don't care about their personal lives. I'm not into that, who they married, who they divorced, what they're, I don't care about any of that. I love their journey. I love, in the case of Willa Cather, one of my favorite things about her is her independence, her autonomy. I mean, she grew up in a time when women were expected to get married and stay in the home, and that was really it. And Willa Cather defied convention, and she went beyond and broke barriers to go to college and be one of the most fabulous writers ever. And I like that. I like stories about women who didn't just want to do what people expected them to do. I like people who defy convention, and she was definitely one of those women. Another one of my favorite books, Anne of Green Gables. I know all of us, again, this is another one that I did not read in school. I read this on my own, and I've gone on to read many more books by L.M. Montgomery, and she's another one. Anne of Green Gables, um, my favorite series for the book is actually on Netflix. That is, there have been several adaptations of the book done in movies and TV, but my favorite series of all time is on Netflix. And I know that they canceled the show, I think, but I wish they would bring it back. So, Netflix, if you're listening, There are a lot of writers out there, a lot of readers, a lot of people who love Anne of Green Gables who want you to bring back that series. Bring it back, please. Here's another one of my favorite writers, Agatha Christie. I came to know Agatha Christie when I was a senior in high school. No, I take that back, a sophomore in high school. And my favorite English teacher loved Agatha Christie. And she had this habit of making us read a biography, a short biography on each writer before we studied their work. So I read about Agatha Christie, and my teacher said this is one of her favorite writers. So I thought I would give her a chance. And she is one of the greatest mystery writers of all time. And I think I can't remember how many books she wrote. And she died in 1976, but I think she wrote, I don't know, maybe 80, 90 books, something like that. But yeah, she is the greatest mystery writer of all time. So, and this is called The Tuesday Club Murders. So Agatha Christie, of course, being a mystery writer, always deals with murder. So she's worth a read. Written so many books. I love this collection, actually. I have paperbacks, but I love the leather-bound collection because it just looks so old-fashioned. And I think I got these at my library, but I'm sure you can find these on Amazon or eBay. I also, being from New York, and I love Broadway, I love plays. This was one of my favorite plays, still is, Our Town by Thornton Wilder. And I first read this in ninth grade. And I think I played the part of Becky in class, which was terrible. I'm a terrible actress. But yeah, this is one of my greatest this is one of the greatest plays and my favorite. I just love the long soliloquies in this uh play. So if you haven't read this, here's another one that you really should check out, Our Town by Thornton Wilder. Now, I find lately that I haven't been reading as much fiction, and I'm a fiction writer, by the way, not a popular writer, but I'm a fiction writer nonetheless. And I have not been reading a whole lot of fiction books lately, which I really need to get back into. My thing is memoirs, biographies, autobiographies. I love them all. And this is an oldie but goodie, Dolly Parton. And this was a Christmas gift to me by my father when I was in high school. That's how long ago this came out. But if you love Dolly Parton, and I don't know anybody who doesn't love her, even if you don't like country music, you have to love Dolly. You have to love her personality, her tenacity, her business drive, her aspirations. She is just a wonderful storyteller, songwriter. And if you want to learn all about what makes Dolly Dolly, you should read this autobiography. It's called Dolly Parton, My Life and Other Unfinished Business. And let's see. Louisa May Alcott. I had the privilege of going to Concord, Massachusetts twice, one in 2014 and last summer, and I got to visit Orchard House, which was the home of Louisa May Alcott. And this book, Marmee and Louisa, is all about her relationship with her mother. And it was a fascinating read. So I love to read anything that has to do with Louisa May Alcott. I love the classic writers. And by the way, let me tell you how I actually got into reading the classics and loving classic writers. I was, again, in high school, sophomore in high school, and I had always been a voracious reader. But up until that point, I was only reading books by R.L. Stine because I was young and I was a teenager. And anybody who knows R.L. Stine knows that he is the Stephen King for teenagers. So I was reading books by R.L. Stine. And when I got to high school, of course, the classics, you had to read them. And I had this fabulous English teacher my sophomore and junior year of high school. And she introduced me to the classics. And that's when I start reading people like Louisa May Alcott and William Shakespeare and Agatha Christie and so many more. Here's a biography that I have just finished on Harper Lee. Afternoons with Harper Lee by Wayne Flint. I actually had the privilege of interviewing Wayne Flint. You can find that interview on my channel. But Harper Lee was probably the most enigmatic writers that we've ever known. We read To Kill a Mockingbird. Those of us who love To Kill a Mockingbird wanted so many other books by Harper Lee, and she only wrote that one until we found out in 2015 there was another. Actually, before To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee wrote Go Set a Watchman. But she is just one of those writers that you want to know. You really want to sit down with her, have a cup of tea, get to know her, and ask her, why didn't you write any more? But I believe, as she told Oprah at one point, when Oprah asked her the same question, why didn't you write any more books? She said, I said all I had to say in To Kill a Mockingbird. But of course, we as readers wanted so much more. And of course, now she was a private person, but this book doesn't really go too much into her private life. It mostly talks about the different events that she took place in and that she took part in, which were few and far between because she did not like public appearances. And Wayne Flint, of course, knew Harper Lee personally. And as I said, check out my interview with Wayne Flint. This is a fascinating read if you want to get to know Harper Lee a little bit more. And of course, sadly, she passed away in 2016, but this is definitely worth the money. And the last book that I want to talk about today is M Train by Patti Smith. This book I read a few years ago, and it is, I guess it's a memoir. You would call it a memoir, and it really talks about Patti Smith as a writer and the literary pilgrimages she has made. And if you are a writer, you know, as I do, because I've gone on many literary pilgrimages, it's fascinating to go to the homes and walk in the footsteps of famous writers. So this book talks about all of the pilgrimages that Patti Smith took. It talks about her sitting in a cafe, and that's the picture of her at her favorite little table and writing. And as a writer, I could attest. I have my favorite spot too at one of my local cafes. And it just talks about all of the inspiration and aspirations that helped her become a fabulous writer. So this is like I call it the writer's Bible, because there's just something so fascinating about this book. I love books that are inspiring to me as a writer, and I love learning about a writer's journey. Like I said, I don't really care about anybody's personal life. I don't care who they're married to, who they got divorced from. I don't care. I want to know, where did you write? What made you want to write? What makes a good writer? Because often these writers have great advice. So that's what I'm interested in, and maybe you are too. So M Train by Patti Smith, definitely a must read. So from time to time, I'll come back on, talk about more of my favorite books, and I have a whole stack for 2023 that I want to read. Also, one of my idiosyncrasies, I guess you would call it, I love to write down the books that I read every year. So every year I type out a list. I write books down as I read them, and then I type them out and I put them in a binder. I know it's very OCD, but I love to look back at the books that I read throughout my life, throughout the years. So I will come back in maybe a few weeks and show you a stack of 2023 books that I have read. And maybe I'll dig out some of the books I read in 2022 and give you guys some more ideas. So hope you like this little intro to my favorite books. And again, please subscribe to my channel. And I will see you back on Tea with Tara with more writers and more conversations about writing. Until then, keep writing, keep reading.